Welcome, everybody, to another exciting episode of HomeKit Insider. This episode is brought to you by Zocdoc. So this week, I've got with me again, as semi-frequently, it's Wes Hilliard. How you doing, man?
Pretty good. Yeah, our schedules are just fun to flip-flop back and forth on sometimes. We got interviews, and there's babies juggling around, so you never know who's going to appear here, but we try to make it work.
I know. I am just very impressed that my child is able to juggle. Like, usually you have to be like at least a teenager, but no, he can do it. He can completely juggle. You'd think we wouldn't let him have chainsaws, but he hasn't dropped them yet. So we'll
chainsaws.
keep running with it. They're smaller. He can't lift a lot. Anyway, we have a couple quick news items to hit, and then we're going to be moving to our Dub roundup. All the smart home news, and there's like a lot in a little at the same time. I feel like there's a lot to discuss, but not a ton of things, but we're going to get into it.
Like 3 main features, but each one has implications. Yeah,
exactly. So let's go ahead and hit it. Starting off with the Insta360 Go 3S. If you're familiar with Insta360, you know they make cameras. So why are we talking about them? Well, their Go 3S is their newest one. It's a super tiny portable little camera. It only weighs 1.4 ounces, which is crazy. It shoots 4K video at 30 frames per second, or 1080p at 200 frames per second. Magnetic mounting, waterproof by itself to 33 feet, has built-in AI editing into its software. There's an additional pod piece that clips into it that'll give you a screen, and you can preview your shots, or it can act as a remote shutter. The reason we're talking about it on this show is because it's like the first camera to integrate with Apple Find My. And Wes, how have maybe you have, how have I not thought about this? Like, I'm sitting here doing things like I got a small rig connector for the bottom of my camera to add to it. Like, why did I never think that we would see maybe companies like Nikon or Sony, anyone like that, integrating Find My into their products? That makes so much sense.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things where I think we're going to get to the point where everything's just going to have Find My compatibility, just because it's so simple to add. I believe as long as you have a device with various, radio waves, Bluetooth, whatnot, as long as it can connect to the network in some way, it can do it. It just needs the protocol built in. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see more stuff getting this in the future. And I also have the small rig attachment in the base of my camera just to have an AirTag attached to it. But built-in functionality is always better than just strapping things on. So.
Exactly. It makes sense. And I love seeing it built into stuff. We've seen, other headphones add it, and it just seems like it's one of those things that's been a little bit small or slow on the uptake, but let's see more of this. This is amazing. This thing's going to run you $300, but I've used these Insta360s before. I used the Go 3, which was only 2.7K, where this is 4K, so a good upgrade in resolution there. I loved it. It's so cool. Like, it's like it's like the size of your thumb. It's basically like your thumb.
Right.
And there's even like a magnetic holder for your shirt, kind of like my mic right now. And it'll just give you that first person POV completely hands-free.
So
they're really neat.
You can have your human AI pen on one side and your Go 3S on the other side, right? That's going to take off for sure.
I mean, arguably one of those is more useful than the other. So
one of them will catch fire, but we won't tell you which.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on to the next bit in news, our friends over at Meross, they have released a new smart device. So this is a temperature and humidity sensor. What is unique about this one is that it's solar powered. Solar powered, you don't ever have to replace the batteries. As long as it's within range of the sun, theoretically, it should basically be good to go. It heats itself up via the sun, charges the internal battery, gets it through the night, you're set. Features, it's Wi-Fi enabled. For HomeKit, you do need to add the Meross Hub. One of their hub products does temperature and humidity. And I was curious, Wes, because my first thought was like with solar, is this just going to get hot and skew your temperature readings? That was my worry. They claim that it is very accurate. It's one of the most accurate around. They say within a half a degree, plus or minus like 0.5 Fahrenheit, which is pretty darn accurate. So if that's true, that's pretty awesome. So $30. There's a $3 coupon on it right now, at least while we're recording. So $27, never have to replace batteries, works with Apple Home. That seems pretty solid. What do you think, Wes?
I haven't thought about that before. Like, imagine you have a temperature sensor, but the radiation from it just working, affecting the thermometer by heating up the air around the device. Hopefully people have accounted for that. I believe like that feels like something that you could account for. Maybe having an internal thermometer and kind of getting the difference between the two, so they know what to subtract to get the actual accurate temperature. But otherwise, this is interesting. A good price, and there's always a use for more information about your home and there's stuff inside of it or outside of it even. But solar power is very clever. I wish more things could be solar powered. I was looking, more cameras are getting solar power connectivity, but none of them are HomeKit. Nope. You can't do it for some reason. So
I also maybe it's just because it's not as aesthetically pleasing, but like the Samsung remotes are awesome because they have the built-in solar panel. So it's just in your living room, and your remote for your television is always charged.
Right.
Kind of cool to add that into, the Siri remote, but I don't see Apple doing it. Like, even though it's like in line with their environmental goals, it just doesn't look as nice.
It's interesting. Apple's never done anything with solar. Now that you mention it, like nothing. Because I could imagine just even a battery case for some reason having a little like minutia of a solar panel in it. I don't know. Like it's an interesting technology that's very inefficient in a lot of ways. So you can't put it in a lot of things. But I mean, calculators have had them for 100 years and they've done fine. So I don't know.
Well, you don't need calculators anymore, Wes. There's math notes. You don't need.
Right.
The iPad has a calculator.
The iPad has a calculator. That's what we've been waiting for. Stone Ages until now, and now the future is here, and we can finally solve the world's problems with the calculator on iPad.
Okay. Well, before we get into the actual smart home, topic of DubDub, let's go ahead, take our break. Let's thank our sponsor for the episode. You heard them at the top of the episode. It is Zocdoc. We have talked about them before, and we're going to talk about them again. But basically, Zocdoc is a free website that you can go to, or an app. You can download the app, and you can find the best doctor that suits your needs. Whether you're looking for a specialist, whether you're looking for a general purpose doctor, you can find all of them within Zocdoc. And they are user reviewed from actual patients that have visited them. So you can find one that is actually kind of what you're looking for. You can read these reviews until you find one that you like. Plus, my favorite bit is that you can find out if they take your insurance before you go. So you know that you aren't going to show up and have just a giant unexpected bill because they don't take your insurance. Or you have to say, oh, okay, well then I need to leave. And you have to go home, find another doctor, and go out again. You don't have to deal with that hassle. It is so annoying, and I have been there. So I love that you can see reviews of all of these doctors. You can see if they take your insurance before you even go, and you can book your appointments. You can get appointments to go in, or you can do remote appointments. So if you feel like garbage, you don't want to get up and go somewhere, you can just book an appointment, do it through the app, talk to your doctor, get the medical attention that you need. There are so many benefits to Zocdoc. I've used it. My wife has used it. I recommend it to everybody I know that is looking for that is looking for a doctor. Zocdoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare highly rated in-network doctors near you and instantly book appointments with them online. So here's what you guys can do. Go to Zocdoc.com/HKI and download the Zocdoc app for free. And find and book a top-rated doctor today. That is ZocDoc.com/HKI. ZOC, well, I don't have to spell it again, Zocdoc.com/HKI. Thank you as always to Zocdoc for sponsoring the episode. So, Wes, before we get into the topics, what did you think of DubDub? What did you think of all the announcements overall? We don't have to go into all the specifics, but what do you think of the event?
Well, of course, if you want the specifics, Apple Insider podcast this past Friday covered everything you might want to know about everything except iOS 18 because we're saving that for next week. There's so much to cover there. We wanted to give it its own show, but we definitely opened up big. We talked about Apple Intelligence and everything. But for me personally, I enjoyed the show. I mean, I'm glad they did it in the order they did. It clarified a few things. If you go back and look at the keynote, everything announced before Apple Intelligence is coming to everything that is compatible with the updates. So all the way back to the iPhone XR is getting everything in iOS 18 other than Apple Intelligence. So
I did have people messaging and like, is it even worth upgrading to iOS 18 this fall if there's no Apple Intelligence? Like, yeah. Did you miss the entire rest of the keynote?
There's so much. There's so much. The customization stands out to me. If I had to pick a favorite that wasn't AI related, and which is no longer a dirty word because it's Apple Intelligence, so I'm okay with it now. No, but seriously, the standout customization, absolutely. Dark icons. I've been waiting for this for years from Apple. I never thought they would do it, but like the dark reminders icon, Apple Music, all of it just looks so good. And the tinted versions are a little ugly right now because you have to optimize for those. But I've seen what you can do to optimize for that. And if developers really dive into that and we get some creative icon designers, it's going to be awesome being able to use the tinting feature. So don't give up on that one yet. I've seen some criticism around that one, but the customization features this year are great. Control Center especially. And I think that one's important too for Apple Home users because of the way you can set up your own different HomeKit widgets on different pages. You can have just up to 10 pages of just buttons you can press for HomeKit without ever having to launch an app. So I don't know. A lot of good stuff this year.
Absolutely. So I guess that's a minor thing that I didn't even have on the list, but there is a redesigned Control Center. The biggest thing is Apple split it into those pages. So your first one or however many is going to be your favorites and those common controls. But if you keep swiping or you just swipe individually between pages, there's dedicated ones for media playback, connectivity, and then the home. So like Wes said, you can just keep adding controls here for whatever you want.
You can order those in any way you want. And the most clever thing they did here, and they mentioned this in one of the interviews, is if you grab in the top right corner to open Control Center like you normally do, you don't let go. Keep swiping till you get to the page that you want to get to, and it just click down. And like I said, you can put those in any order you want. You can have every page just be a mixture of media and home controls. It's just whatever you want. I think that's very smart.
Yeah, I think it's a really nice upgrade for that. It looks so cool to be able to pull down and just jump to the direct page that you want. So swipe down, get to your home controls, control whatever you want.
I have a question for you. Are you going to make one of the buttons, the camera or flashlight buttons on the lock screen, into an Apple Home launcher?
I haven't decided what I want to do yet. I've got some kind of time, and here's my thing too. Is like even like the camera one, like you can swap that out now for third-party cameras, and there's a lot of third-party cameras that do so many better things than Apple's does. But I also love the ability to use Quick Take, like just to hold the shutter and start recording a video, or tap to do photos. And I've never found another app that has all the other features that I like, that is that quick to jump for videos. So I'm a little torn on even if I'm going to do another camera. But
Apple,
I don't know.
Apple gave us a bit of a solution there. You can have the best of both worlds because you're on the lock screen anyway. So you can actually swipe to the camera. I'm having a tough time too because I've realized I kind of like having the flashlight there. Sure, I'll probably change the camera to Halide or something and then swipe over to the Apple camera because I do switch between those two a lot. But the flashlight one, I'm just like, I kind of like that. Maybe I can turn it into a shortcut that launches different utilities. That would be interesting. Make it into its own little action button kind of thing. But
I know, and now you can even do more with the action button on the side because you can set it to anything that shows up in Control Center. So you can tie that to additional things. I mean, you can run shortcuts before, but now there's even more options. So there's so much customization. To me, it's almost overwhelming because I've always been a little bit of a purist. Like I like how I don't know. Like I used to for the longest time was I would keep my first page of apps in the stock
Apple's default.
Yeah. I just liked how they were laid out, and I really liked. So I had default pattern, and then everything else after that. And then honestly, I just never even went to the other pages because I would just use Spotlight search. So I would always use basically one page and then Spotlight for everything else. But now I don't
it's
know.
conflicting because I remember, so this was a back in the day thing. I don't think people really think this way anymore, but it was certainly the way people thought in 2014, 2015 era. But it was when I moved from Android to iPhone, I remember thinking about and making the kind of silly argument of, well, I just want to use my device. I don't want to spend time going through and picking a clock widget. I don't want to, tinker with all these settings and all these controls. Android was just so overwhelming that I felt like all I was doing was customizing it. I never used the device as a device. I just use it as a playground. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think it came off as snide. So again, 10 years ago, me versus me today, maybe I've grown a little, but I don't know. Looking at it now, it's like Apple's worked backwards into that direction of now everything's customizable. Of course, you can't install your own launcher and overwrite the operating system or whatever, but they've gone so far that honestly, Apple today's moved past Android in a lot of ways, and different ways you can customize the device. So it definitely, I get that conflicting feeling too of when is enough as far as customization goes, and how far do I want to take it? Because Apple kind of made those decisions in the first place because they researched and they figured out this is probably the most optimal way to have this layout. This is the most optimal way to have this setup. Do I go against that or not? But having the option there is definitely nice.
I know, and I will say this year after Dub, it is the most vitriol and hate that I have seen in comments on Twitter and on YouTube and TikTok. Like, just
In what direction?
They're not even saying like, oh, this is nothing but an Android clone.
Right. Well,
Just
that's every
switch
year.
to Android. No, it is not this bad.
Yeah.
Like, it's basically because Apple allows like, equivalent of launchers and skins on Android that people are like freaking out. Like, oh, at this point, it's just Android. I'm like,
I would argue, I'm going to eventually do a piece on this, but I would definitely argue that between the two, Apple's decision making around device customization means it's still an iPhone, whereas Android, you can take it so far as it's basically Linux. You can make it into whatever crazy carnival you want it to be, upside down world. It can just be turn the whole thing inside out and just make no sense of it except to you, like whatever. Like you can really go crazy on Android. But Apple's iPhone is still iPhone, and that was one of the interviews they discussed this. We're testing the limits of customization while still having it remain iPhone and iOS, and I appreciate that, but this is definitely not Android level of customization in a good way. I think it's thoughtful, I think it's useful, and I think it's personal in a way that Android even isn't, because again, you're making your device work for you. This goes to focus modes, this goes to everything else beyond just changing your icon color. It's not just what it looks like, but how those tools are utilized. And I think that's the difference here.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that I get frustrated by is it's like there's this hate from either side of when a platform copies a feature. And it's like this is the point. Like this is why there are multiple platforms, for people to be able to choose and for them to spark that innovation and continuation of new features. Like, it's a good thing. Obviously, iOS has taken features from Android and Android has taken features from iOS. Like, it happens every single year, and it's only a good thing. Just because we get new features doesn't mean anyone invented the wheel here. Like, there's new features. We're excited.
People lose nuance, especially when talking about tech, because they're so passionate about it, but it applies to any other industry. Should Coke Zero, I don't know which was first, but if Coke Zero came out first and is a 0-calorie Coke or whatever, should that mean Pepsi should just throw in the towel and be like, well, I guess we can't make a 0-calorie drink anymore? Or like, should PlayStation not make Killzone just because Halo existed first, right? Like, these competing platforms have always done stuff like this. Should musical artists not use a certain rhythm in their song because someone did it before? People can iterate, they can perfect it. I think, and that's the point I think I'm making about Apple's customization here, and we can move on, is Apple started closed and Android started open, and they're slowly meeting in the middle. Like Android's closing down, iPhone's opening up. I prefer Apple's approach. I've mentioned that before, but they're doing it in a way. They're opening it up. They're opening up customization and all these features in a way that's just thoughtful. It's not throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. It's useful, personal customization. And after we get past the shock value of initial conversations, there's also so much silly stuff about iOS 18. We ran a story today as we record about TikTokers talking about iOS 18 is the cheater's operating system, for cheating on a relationship or whatever. There's always going to be a lot of silly conversation going on, but I wonder how it's going to morph over the next year as people get a hold of this stuff, compare it to Android, and see where it goes from there. Because for me personally today, like I said, I've grown a little bit. Use what device works best for you. Android does a lot of stuff different from iOS. iPhone works better for me, but for some people, Android's going to work better. Some people really want to have a video wallpaper on their lock screen, right? And so go buy a Google Pixel for that.
I agree with everything except for that Pepsi should exist. Because I've tasted Diet Pepsi and Pepsi
But Dr.
Zero,
Pepper.
and Dr. Pepper is great. Continue
Okay.
what you're doing, Dr. Pepper. Dr. P, you're crushing it.
Mhm.
You're doing great.
But just no Pepsi. We can
Coke's
get rid of
the go. Pepsi's
Okay.
or Dr. Pepper's great. Regular Pepsi's honestly fine. But
Sure.
the Diet and the Zero, it does taste like swill. It is not great.
I don't
and
touch
I
any of
will
that
avoid
stuff.
any restaurants because of it. But
Give me the-
moving on to important things.
Hey, give me the straight sugar cane soda. I will go buy the Mexican branded Coke just so I can get like the most pure, unhealthy possible beverage. Do not give me anything diet, please and thank you.
Well, let's see. So in the home news, first things first, one thing that you guys have talked about, you have asked us this question on the show and we have answered you on how to do it. But now all of that goes out the window because Apple finally is allowing us to set our own preferred home hub. That's right. In the settings app of the Home app, you can designate which of your HomePods or Apple TVs will be your default home hub. If that should go offline, of course, your other ones will be your fallback options, but you can specify which one is that primary one.
I mean,
So
do
many
the
times
wired one.
this has come up.
Yeah. Like the wire, like why didn't Apple do this before? So many times I'll see it say your current active home hub is the one in the basement furthest from the router. And I'm just like, why? What's the point? Yeah. Use the one connected to the router. At least now I can choose.
Exactly. Not only that, but like, I don't want like I don't know, an Apple TV HD trying to do the heavy lifting when I have a brand new Apple TV 4K that has like Thread and everything else built in. Like that should be my home hub, not my legacy devices. That's not a problem anymore. Before to do this, you had to unplug all of your possible home hubs, then plug in your primary, let it connect, and then connect everything else. And that would stay the preferred one until something happened. But that's not a thing with whatever, iOS 18 as well as the rest of the updates. We also now have custom guest access, which you can designate for garage, for locks, and for security systems. Notably, everything else is missing. So you cannot have a guest come over and grant them access to your lights or anything like that, which I find slightly frustrating.
It's frustrating, but I'll give them a break because once you're in the home, there's going to be buttons, switches, HomePods, something. Unless you literally have a lock on your door and a light bulb in your ceiling, and that's the only devices you have in your house. I feel like we're past that at this point. You should be able to walk in and comfortably activate the lights with your voice. Maybe you can leave them instructions. Hey, the light switch is this button on the wall. That's actually not a light switch, right? Like there's ways to do that. I agree that it would be better in software. It should be in the home app for the guests. Like just give them a guest access to your home app and then remove things maybe you don't want them having access to. But
exactly, because we need that for like children anyway. Like maybe not like a guest access for children, but like maybe you don't want your kids to have access to like the lights in your bedroom because that's going to be obnoxious. They can figure they can toggle your lights on and off 50 times from their devices, but you want them to be able to have access to like, you know, the colors in their room.
I don't know why
Those
that's
types
not
of
an option
things.
right now, right? Like, why is it that everyone I add to my home app has wholesale access to literally everything? That seems a little odd to me, especially maybe if, I don't know, you have a home with kids and you lock your office, but for some reason you want to be bougie and have a smart lock for your office. Well, now your kids can just unlock it, right? Like, I don't know, just something like that.
Well, not even your office. Maybe you have any weapons in your house. It doesn't have to be
Right.
like a pew pew, but like knives or anything. Maybe you want to keep those locked away because you're responsible. Obviously,
Hmm.
they're safes, but you can even have a safe in HomeKit. I have a
Yeah.
Gale safe right here that works with HomeKit. And, if I had anything in there that I wanted to keep away from kids, maybe I'm into cigars and I keep them in there.
Right.
Like, I don't know, or liquor cabinets, all that kind of stuff. You're
Yeah.
going
You
to
have to
want to
imagine
control
that
that access.
it's just like there's so many scenarios you can imagine. Maybe you have a responsible kid, but for whatever reason their friend grabs their phone and opens control center, and they have home control turned on it with a locked phone, and the friend's just like, haha, I'm going to start messing with stuff. And it's just like, you don't want any of that. Like, I don't know, obviously go into your kid's phone and turn off control center access to HomeKit, but um yeah, I feel like there's just so many ground level controls here that Apple could still address, but I'm glad that we're seeing some advancement in HomeKit, like guest user access. That's such an obvious thing we needed. I mean, Apple let you have a car with car key and pass it to another person and restrict their like geolocation and everything before we even got basic guest access in HomeKit. And it's such a funny thing to me.
I agree. And not only that, but we also still don't have um home key sharing.
Right.
And like what's curious is like from my understanding on this is like you can share access to your security system, your lock, your garage. It'll show in the home app where they can control those things when they're at your location because you can't, I believe they won't even like work remotely. It'll be local. Like when they get to your house, they will work. But why can we still not send a key to someone? Why
Right.
can I not send a key to my neighbor or something and allow them to be able to do that without having to go through all the home app stuff? It
Mhm.
seems easier, and I don't know where that's going. But since we're talking about locking doors, unlocking doors, they have added auto unlocking. This is one feature that we have seen prevalent in smart locks, but utilizing their setup processes and the
Mhm.
third party apps. So now, if you have a supported lock, you get within 6 feet of that, it will unlock that door for you. And that works with both your iPhone and your Apple Watch. But the asterisk here is that you need a lock that supports UWB or ultra
Mhm.
wideband. That's how they are detecting like where you are, how far you are away before it does that
Right.
authentication and unlocks the door. And right now, there are no locks available that support this feature.
So not even Level Lock Plus, because I know I can do the tap thing, but that's NFC, isn't it?
Yep.
Hmm. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
disappointing. I mean, considering it's a relatively new lock, UWB existed when I bought it, and I understand not every standard's going to be in everything, but a $400-ish smart lock, and we're already now a standard ahead. So I guess we're going to be keeping an eye out for UWB locks. I don't need it on every door, so I guess I'll move the level lock to the back door and then get a ultra wideband one for the front door if and when anyone actually supports it. Another fun thing to look for on the episodes. When we find one, we will be
Right.
one of the first ones to tell you for sure.
I know. And so now that's going to be the question is first off, this isn't going to work until the fall, until iOS 18
Mhm.
is released, assuming that's like an at launch feature.
Right.
But what's on top of that is we have the hovering Aliro, which we haven't really talked about on the show, but this was kind of formalized in, I want to say November. It was before CES last year. So since we haven't really talked about it, Aliro is a new smart lock standard that is being created by the CSA. So the same
Of course.
organization that is creating Matter is creating Aliro, and it is backed by Apple, Samsung, Amazon, and the rest of them. And it includes support for multiple connectivity options, including ultra wideband. It'll work with NFC, Bluetooth Low Energy, and UWB. So those will be how that will connect, and it'll offer this automatic unlocking thing. So what are our odds here, Wes, that we're not going to get these locks
Right.
until Aliro is finalized.
And then it needs to be added to Apple HomeKit, and that's not going to be till next year. So maybe 2027 we'll get it.
Exactly.
Fully and 100% supported. Yeah. I mean,
yep.
I don't know. Maybe we don't. So I understand that that's a standard that's coming, and maybe the people building these devices are going to wait on that. But Apple including it now in HomeKit with Matter, you'd have to assume that maybe, and if someone works in this stuff that knows better, get in contact with us. You'd have to assume the ability to have UWB and smart locks already exists. It's just this Aliro is going to have a new unified standard or something. But I would hope that if Apple made a feature for it, is launching it in iOS 18 in the Home app, that technically speaking, someone could build it today. But we'll have to wait and see, I guess.
I know it'll be interesting to see if we get like a lock that comes out with direct Apple Home certification, and then maybe a year down the line we get an Aliro certification on top of that. I don't know, right. But point is, it's not out right now. Moving down the list, here's more things that are nebulous. We have robotic vacuum and mop support coming to iOS 18. This is huge. This is big, right. But I cannot get a concrete answer on the rest of Matter 1.2 or Matter 1.3. So we have RoboVacs. Where are microwaves, ovens and stoves, the additional environmental sensors, and all those other devices? I
wonder, and we haven't heard from anyone yet, but I wonder how this stuff works, because I'm reviewing the Narwhal Frio at S8 Ultra. There's a lot of letters and numbers in that one, but it's the Narwhal that we discussed before. It was revealed at CES this year. That review will be out in the next couple weeks. It's a nice vacuum. Love it. Little robot guy. But it's definitely better, an improvement over a couple that I've had before. But I do wonder, this is a new vacuum, came out 2024. Will it appear in HomeKit this year? Or am I going to have to wait for...
Does it have Matter? Did they announce Matter? Because I actually don't, of all the ones that I'm checked at CES, I asked them and they did not give me an answer on if it supported Matter.
Right now, I haven't seen any indication that it does. I feel like that would be something I could see, though. Unless it's somewhere, I'll have to ask our contact on that one. But yeah, that's definitely not something that's been advertised, at least, or that I've noticed. But if it does have Matter certification, that would be great. But again, why these standards all happening so close together, right? Like, I imagine if this doesn't have Matter, it's the very last one they released without it, and that would be very annoying, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I have the Roborock S8 Max V Ultra, and that is the very first one to achieve their Matter certification. And this should work.
But that came out like the same time frame, correct? Yeah. That was earlier this year.
It was also announced at CES. Mm-hmm.
So I'll have to check, because that's a good question. I feel like I need to know that. But as far as like the branding and everything goes, as far as the feature set that I've been running down for the testing, I haven't seen any sign of that. So I'll have to see if it's maybe something they have to turn on later, or they've built in, or they've just left out in favor of the next one will get it, which would, again,
it could just still be expensive certification, of course, right. Too. So
I always forget. I mean, I always forget, because Apple kind of broke me on this, the HomeKit certification having a hardware component when it first launched, if you remember that. Mm-hmm. I always forget what today devices can get certified for things after they've been released to the public. Like things that I have in my home right now, what can get certified for Matter? Is there a hardware component? That's something that I don't have a firm grasp on. I need to brush up more information on, but I do wonder if this is one of those things that could get certified now that it's already out on the market.
We'll see, but I did reach out to Apple for comment on that. So if I do hear back, obviously I'll let you guys know in the next episode. But where the rest of the 1.2 spec and 1.3 spec changes are, and when Apple expects to include them.
There's a lot of really cool stuff here, and we've brought it up before on the show. But so the robot vacuums create a 3D model of the house. In the Narwhal app, I can see a room map, which is really cool. Is any of the mapping stuff going to ever show up in HomeKit? But we do, I know not right now, but we do have something interesting that we can talk about the electricity usage metric that's being added, and it's only in California now, of course, but they're going to get other partners. I go through Appalachian Power Company, which is a huge East Coast provider. It's like Virginia, Tennessee, North Carolina, like it's everywhere. So I have to imagine mine's going to be on there, but a lot of the smaller co-ops, we're probably years away from seeing stuff like that get adopted. But instead of beating around it, it's a new feature in HomeKit that in the energy section where you can see clean energy before, now you'll get more information about your personal usage by signing into the utility in HomeKit. I think this is huge. This is really important. Very smart stuff. Hopefully, again, this leads to eventually adopting solar panels and power generators and battery power generators into HomeKit to get a broader view of our electrical use. But electricity is such an important part of the home. I'm glad that we're seeing more of this stuff get added.
Yeah, I think this is huge. This is technically part of Matter. I mean, Matter does have electricity monitoring and everything like that. There's also EV chargers and those types of things. So it's not clear if this is Apple's own in-house thing. It sounds like maybe because they're going through the actual providers. But this will work at launch with Pacific Gas and Electric Company, or at least select customers of PG&E, because it's going to have like live updating, power meters, because not all of them, like I don't know about you, Wes, I still have a man that comes to my house once every couple months and checks my meter and makes sure the estimated usage is continuing. Then you get billed differently based on usage. It's not like a live reading of my electricity. So I don't think this is going to come, like we have a huge provider. We've got Ohio Edison, which is like First Energy. First Energy is massive, including like in Virginia and everything. But they, the meters on the houses aren't like, cellular connected or Wi-Fi connected or anything. I'm not going to be able to get a regular reading from that. Maybe if there was a device that would go in which there are many of those that could go into your electrical box and report this to you. But the fact that it's only working if you directly sign into your provider, I wish there was another way to do that. It just seems like it's going to take a very long time for this to get added to others.
I feel like this is going to be a very macro view for a lot of people. You're going to get month-to-month results. Now, the people who do have the basically continuous connections, like more modern areas like in Los Angeles or San Francisco, would probably have more active connections you can literally monitor from your internet. Our meters are old, but they keep adding like little add-ons. Right now, the guy doesn't have to walk up to our house anymore. He just has to drive by in a truck and it collects the information, but it's still not internet based. So I have a feeling that this is one of those things that you can opt in for, maybe add it to your bill, say, hey, give me a new meter. That's the kind of stuff in the next 5-10 years we're going to be seeing. But as far as personal use, for me, I could honestly see Appalachian adding this as a login item. Let me see electricity use across a month. It'll give me like a day-to-day view, but that information will only be updated when the meter is read, which is inefficient and slower, but it still gives you a good overview. For example, I have an Ecobee thermostat. It's an older model, but I still get monthly energy reports from them saying, hey, you compared to the rest of the country. I think that's still useful to have this aggregate information over the course of the year. How much electricity did you use? What hours of the day are you using more electricity? And having that surface in the Apple Home app is still nice. And if this can get ultimately tied into, hey, you have these devices connected to your electrical grid at home, maybe get a smart circuit panel. So a lot of companies like Blue Eddy, I don't know, the battery companies, they sell smart switch circuit breaker panels that replace your entire circuit breaker panel and allow you to connect. That's how you generally connect battery backup systems and solar to your home. Well, I could imagine a new version of those launching with HomeKit compatibility, attaching to your home grid information from your power provider, and all of that getting in sync in Apple Home. We're probably still a couple of years away from that, but if that's where we get to, great. More data is good. Yes, it may be slow for most people. United States' power infrastructure is decades behind where it should be. We've seen problems in Texas with stuff like this, so don't hold your breath on this just suddenly becoming magically all internet connected. But I still think having the month-to-month data in the Home app is going to be useful.
I mean, that is what you're describing is what Matter has. Matter has exactly that, where you can monitor solar, your EV, your coming from the grid, your usage, all of that kind of stuff is in Matter, and or will be in Matter very soon. And we're still just waiting on what Apple's going to conclude of Matter in the short term.
Right. I have a feeling the way this will ultimately work, because yes, it's all Matter, but how will Apple implement it? So I would have to assume what we'll see in the near term, in the next year or so, if Apple brings in these third-party things like batteries and EV, like if they actually bring all this in soon, and hopefully they do, this is a good sign that they're going to, the electric power company attachment will just be a good way to verify your personal readings are what the electric company is also seeing. So it'll like I said, it's like the health app. It's all good in aggregate. It'll be able to gather this information and provide you details, actionable information you can take over the long term. Now, you're not going to sleep one night with your Apple Watch on and it tell you you're going to have a heart attack based on one night's information. It's a large, long gathering process, and I believe this is going to be similar, and will personally be responsible for the day-to-day information as far as electricity goes. So we'll have to invest in more smart outlets with energy tracking and stuff like that if we want that granular of information. And I could see, you don't need it on every outlet in the house. I would plug in like the refrigerator and the, any window units and stuff like that are high power draw to get a wider view. Because you plug it into a television, that's not going to tell you much, because you're not going to be able to change much about how your TV usage is going to be. So, and it's not going to drive your power up that much anyway.
Well, the last thing that is may or may not be new is that TVs, speakers, and router accessories may or may not be now supported in third-party apps. So Aaron Pierce originally was like, yes, this is happening, which is fantastic, because devices like TVs, your HomePods, Apple TVs, routers, they would show in the Home app, but not in third-party home apps. So if you used any of Aaron Pierce's apps, Home Plus, or Controller 5, like all these different ones that are out there, none of these accessories would surface. But now they might. After he said that this was a thing, and he showed that yes, this is true, he then backpedaled but I can't get them to work. So this is like a may or may not thing at this point. Yeah, exactly. It could be changing by the time we get through the betas. So something to watch out for. We could see an upgrade to third-party home apps with the launch of iOS 18 and these other software updates. I
have one more feature before we cut away.
Okay.
That's not in our notes. I think this is exciting for my perspective. I'll see what you think. The new SharePlay features coming to all the devices. So where we saw this before is Apple CarPlay SharePlay. So when you're in the car driving around with music playing, people could join a SharePlay group and add to the playlist and all of that. That is coming to Bluetooth devices, HomePod, and Apple TV. And I think that's going to be really cool, because the best part about this feature is the people who join the session, the SharePlay session, do not have to have an active Apple Music subscription. So this should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that's great. So let us know what you guys thought of WWDC. Let us know what these new features that you like. Obviously, there's a lot that we didn't see here. We didn't see, support for better AI for HomeKit detection on cameras. We didn't see the ability to set scenes based on a person actually being there. This is not going to go into it, but we also didn't even see the ability to set compound commands with Apple's Assistant. I can't say turn on the living room TV as well as close the shades to 50% and set the hutch lights to 10% in warm yellow. None of those things you can do. It's still individual commands. Hopefully it'll come later. That seems like just building off of Apple Intelligence. Maybe it's a later 2025 thing.
I think this is going to be an Apple Intelligence thing, and this is going to be my mention of Apple Intelligence for this episode, because we didn't really discuss it. Not now, of course, but later I could definitely see you taking a few actions throughout the day, and if 3 or 4 of them are happening close together, like you mentioned, if you're at 4 p.m. changing 6 devices individually in the Home app or using your voice, I think it could learn from that and then suggest a scene that does this and then put it on a schedule for you. As far as being able to do it yourself, like by saying, here's a list of things I want done, I feel like that's pretty inefficient. But it's maybe comes up, I guess, enough that you would need to, it's not going to be the same every time. So maybe a scene isn't worth creating for that. But I think Apple's answer to you on that one would definitely be just create a scene for it and then you'll have a button. But then it's, you know, it's not in the moment, as you would say.
No. And there's plenty of times where you're going to want to control more than one thing at a time, and you can't do it. But like Apple said, they're going to add more intent and other features to Apple Intelligence and Siri throughout the year. So other than that, thank you, Wes, for joining us on the episode. Everybody do what you do best. Give us 5, 10, 100-star rating on the podcast player of choice. Go ahead and watch out the video version of this at youtube.com/HomeKit Insider. Otherwise, catch you guys in the next episode.
See y'all then.